Hey everybody, Justin Queen here with Fish Ohio Outfitters, and today we're tying up some flies for smallmouth bass. Smallmouth fly number 2. We are going to tie a Bob Popovics hollow fly, smallmouth style. In the vise, I've got a Universal Predator 2/0 hook from Partridge. I've got a white bucktail. I've got a fluorescent yellow bucktail. I've got some Nightmare Musky Flies Titan dubbing. Love this stuff. I've got a little bit of Polar Flash, and I've got some EP Component Sparkle in just standard pearl. So here we go. I'm going to use 150 denier gel spun for this. I'm just going to go ahead and dress the hook. I know a lot of people use 100 denier. For me, when I'm building thread cones for hollow flies, I just prefer to use the 150. It makes it easier to build up the bulk that I want a little quicker. So get rid of my tag in there, throw it on Josh's floor, and we're gonna grab our first piece of bucktail. This is a great long bucktail. Not the best I've ever seen, but certainly not the worst. And the rule when you're cutting bucktail free is find what you think you need and then cut it in about half. So I'm going to take that section of bucktail, I'm going to hold it by the tips, and I just want to get rid of all of that short hair underneath. There isn't really any underfur in this, but I just want to get rid of the shorter fibers. So I'm going to take that piece right there. This is going to tie in facing the rear. And without compressing too much, I'm just gonna wrap that in and tie it in. And then I'll start to build some tension to make sure that I really have it locked down nice and tight, as you can see there. All right, I glue every tie down. There's no reason, in my opinion, not to. If you end up with a toothy fish, a pike, a walleye, a saugeye, who knows what, that decides to grab a hold of your hollow fly, you're gonna be really sad if it falls apart. So take a little extra time, put a little bit of glue down, save yourself a whole bunch of headache later. So I'm gonna grab a hold of my Polar Flash like so, get a nice long piece of it, and then I'm just gonna taper the ends. And all I mean by that is I'm gonna grab each piece and I'm gonna pull them out to random lengths. We're gonna bring that back, and I want that longest piece of flash to be just a little longer than my bucktail. And then I'm gonna grab that and I'm gonna fold the second half back over. That makes it so that is in there permanently. It is never gonna go anywhere. Wind forward, and just like so, I'm happy with that. Once again, new tie down, new tag of glue, just to have everything as solid as it possibly can be. Next tie down of bucktail. We're gonna grab a piece that's just, or a section rather, or a clump that's a little denser than the first one that we tied in. So same process, grab the ends, pinch, and just pull out the shortest pieces. Now, I'm gonna hold this up here, and I want it to come up just short of my first bucktail tie down, which ends up being about right there. So I'm just gonna take those butts, I'm gonna clip them a little shorter. Three loose wraps, and then I'm just gonna take my fingers and I'm holding the bobbin under light tension, and I'm just gonna pinch, and I want to make sure that my bucktail is spread out nice and evenly all the way around the hook. And right there, I've got a really nice, even splay. Take my thread, wrap back over my butts, and I'm happy with that. And as you can see, there's very, very little material there. You do not need to use a whole bunch of this. Okay, so what you don't want to do here is tie right over the top of the material that you just tied in, okay? While you're pinching it back, you're going to lift your bobbin up so that it is perfectly even with the hook shank. So up and then over. And I'm going to tie right in front, building up a small material dam. And there's almost no flare to this at all. It lifts just ever so slightly over the hook shank, but not by much. I'm gonna grab, like 5, maybe 6 strands. You can probably barely see that of the EP component. And then we're gonna tie that in and then fold it back just enough to give it a little bit of sparkle. Good there. Tag every cone with just a little bit of super glue. And then walk it forward. Next section. Once again, just a little thicker than the previous. I'm going to line up the ends, and as you can see, there's a progression. The bucktail, I just want it to be come up a little short of the last section that I tied in every time. So we're just going to clip a little bit of those butts off. Once again, grab the ends and just get rid of any short or broken fibers. Three loose wraps. And then holding the bobbin under just a little bit of tension and making sure that I have an even disbursement of my material, and then pull tight. Pull tight. Nice and even. And then we're just going to push it back, come forward, and then around. And there you can see every section elevates just a little bit more with how much flare you have. You want to end up with your last section coming off at, I don't know, 45 degrees, maybe even just a little bit more. We're going to grab a little bit more component. Again, being really sparse with this. That's actually probably twice as much as I need, so get rid of a little. And this stuff is like really, really thin. It does not take much. And then I just tie that down. Tag it with super glue. And then walk my thread forward. So my goal is to get 6 or 7 tie downs. In a perfect world, I like to do 7 smaller sections. So very sparse tie-ins of bucktail. But once again, like I said before, getting increasingly denser as you move forward. Grabbing it by the tips, getting rid of any broken pieces. Three loose wraps. Get that material worked all the way around the hook and then pull tight. Now on this one, I ended up with a little bit of excess material, and that's fine. I'm just gonna walk around with my scissors here and get rid of any excess bulk. A little bit of excess isn't a big deal, but you don't want to have too much of it in there because bucktail traps air and you don't want your fly to float. We want it to suspend, not not float on top. So walking it back. That looks great. Tiny little bit of component. Tag it with a little bit of super glue. Good to go. All right, this particular hollow fly we're gonna do in a reverse bulkhead. And I'll show you what that means right now. So we're gonna grab by the tips. This one is not gonna get trimmed. We're gonna tie it in reverse just like before, but I'm gonna leave some butt ends splayed out, just like so. Okay, and now same thing, under tension, just making sure that the material is worked all the way around the hook shank. Saw a little bare spot there, so I let off of my tension. There we go. And then pull tight. A lot of people like to use a push tool, like a hollowed out pin cap or something. That's fine. I normally have one, I just don't happen to have one here today. It can certainly be done without it, but. Okay, there's that. Once again, just a little bit of flash. And this is where you have to really start to trust the flare. This looks ridiculous on camera, but as soon as this gets into the water, what we end up with is a very teardrop shape, bait fish shaped fly. Once again, it looks kind of wild in the vise and messy, but as soon as this thing gets wet, it's actually really beautiful. Nothing fishes and moves like a hollow fly, in my opinion. It is absolutely my favorite, possibly my favorite smallmouth fly ever. So now we're gonna switch over to our yellow. This bucktail's a little soft for this. Probably wouldn't be my favorite or my first choice, but we're gonna trust it and hope that it works out. Just a couple of loose wraps. Get that material worked all the way around. And then pull tight, pull tight, pull tight. Got a good even spread. And not as even as I'd like. Okay, so here we're just gonna back off tension a little bit and make sure that we get that worked just the way that we want it. A nice even density. There we go. And I'm happy with that. So last section, we're gonna grab some of our Titan dub. This stuff is absolutely awesome. It is the longest dubbing that I've ever found. And as I'm doing this, I'm actually pinching it in the package and then I'm grabbing the ends, and that way it comes out nice and even and stacked perfectly. And I'll even rip stack it just a little bit, pull out any long pieces, and stack it back in with the rest. And we're just gonna wrap that all the way around the shank. I'm gonna do 2 loose wraps, very loose wraps, and then just let it cinch down around the hook. And I like how that turned out, that's perfect. So try to fan it out as evenly as we can. This is not a perfect science, there's no perfect way to do it. I'm actually moving my whole vise around here as I cinch down. Now this looks really ratty, but in a minute, I'm gonna find a comb and I'm gonna comb all that back, and then I'm gonna run it under a little bit of water. And at the end of this video, Big Al is gonna show you how it's supposed to look. So that is the hollow fly for as far as I can take it sitting at the vise. Like I said, now I need to get a comb it out really good, run it under some water, let it air dry, and you'll see what it's supposed to look like here soon enough. Thanks.